Could Red Dwarf's on-ship prison complex, the Tank, have always been there? Perhaps from the very first episode? Join me for a quick-fire theory where I'll be trying to answer one of those little niggling questions about the small rouge one. Oh, and spoiler alert, I'm going to need your help on this one. Well, greetings fellow Dwarfers. It occurred to me that the prison complex shown in Series 8 could very easily have fitted inside even the very first series Red Dwarf, totally unnoticed, given that the ship has such a ludicrous bulk to it. So that raises the obvious question, was the prison only in Red Dwarf in Series 8? Because the Series 8 version of the ship, the long extended version that was rebuilt by the nanobots to original design plans, was the prison only in that version of Red Dwarf because it was rebuilt to different plans? Or could the prison have been there in all the different versions of the Red Dwarf ship? Perhaps even from the very first episode? Interesting question. Let's look at the arguments for and against. Well, first up, Holly seems to very much make it sound like the prison was always on board, even from the very first episode. He said, speaking to Dave, they call it the Tank. There was an inmate population of 400,
all being transported to Adelphi 12. Presumably they've all been resurrected too.
Resurrected too? So kind of implying that not only has the original crew been resurrected, but the prisoners were resurrected, which must have meant they were originally alive back in the first episode. So for me, Holly is very much making it sound like the prison was always there at all times, even when Red Dwarf was 3 million years younger back in our solar system. Another reason it could well have been there is that Hollister didn't include the prison in his list of original design plans alterations that he listed out when he was talking to Dr. Newton. Hollister said, "We now have a quark-level
matter-antimatter generator, ship-wide bioorganic computer networking, and a karaoke bar on C deck."
Plenty of changes, plenty of fun stuff there, but no mention of the prison complex being a new addition to the ship, further implying that it was always on board. And thirdly, as mentioned, Red Dwarf is just so bonkers big that there's no space limitation or any other physical reason why a prison couldn't be included in every design of the ship and go completely unnoticed. I mean, if you go back and watch my country-sized ship video, I kind of showed that literally, if you lay out the floors, Red Dwarf's the size of a country. Could you lose a prison inside of a whole country? Yeah, I reckon you could. So that's the arguments for the Tank having been there all along. Now let's look at why it might not have been. As mentioned, Holly certainly seems to make it sound like the Tank was always there on board. However, doubt could be cast upon this, as Holly himself, apart from being senile and a bit strange, Holly himself was also tampered with by the nanobots in Series 7's Epideme. In that episode, Dave, speaking of the nanobots, said, "So they fixed your core program
and then decided they'd be better off without you?"
Yeah, it was shortly after they'd met me.
This could pour doubt upon all of Holly's statements, as if the nanobots could fix his core program, they could also alter his core program. So if the nanobots know they're going to rebuild the ship to original design plans, and let's say the nanobots did add a prison, then they could alter Holly's programming and put in knowledge of a prison. Another reason it might not have been there is that no mention of the radiation leak deaths in any episode ever seems to include the 400 prisoners in the count-up. It's either just the original count of 169 or the later count of 1169. Even episodes after Series 8 don't seem to include the prisoners in the count-up. For instance, Rimmer, speaking in the Series 12 episode Time Wave, talks of killing over 1,000 people.
I mean, take me. Back in the day, I misrepaired a drive plate and killed over 1,000 people. Now, in our culture, that sort of thing is really frowned upon.
But the prisoners would make it not 1,000 people, it would be more like over 1,500 people. Kind of implying the prisoners weren't there for the radiation leak, so weren't there in the first episode. And lastly, Holly in Back in the Red said that all the officers knew about the Tank, which would presumably mean that they must have had plenty of mentions of the Tank in the confidential files. Something which Lister is heavily implied to be well versed in.
I've seen the crew's files, medical records, sessions with the therapist, the works. Knowledge is power. Who said that? I don't know. Nor do I.
yet he's totally surprised to hear about the tank? I mean, if he's been through the confidential files, surely there must be mention of the prison complex, and might even be mention of the prison guards. Surely they'd be in the confidential files, unless of course there wasn't a tank to mention. Remember, the confidential files were a disc on Starbug that wasn't rebuilt by the nanobots. So those are the arguments for and against there having been a prison on board during the very first episodes. There certainly seems to be more arguments against it having been there. However, the argument of Holly having been repaired and reprogrammed is admittedly perhaps pushing believability just a little bit. But let me know what you think. I said I'm going to need your help on this one. I can't come up with a definitive answer. So what do you think? Could it have always been there? Or is this just a Series 8 location and a one series wonder? Never present before, never present since, and you never want to see it again. Perhaps you're not a big fan of Series 8. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to get a conversation going about this one. Do you think the tank was always there in every series of Red Dwarf? Like and subscribe. Hit the logo. It's around somewhere. Oh, by the way, t-shirts coming soon. What do you think of the blueprint? Yeah, you want one. You smeggin' want one.